Hello, everyone. Well, here we are, the first anniversary of an important event. We're going to talk about that, but in the meantime, we got to go check out how the kids are doing. Here I have a set of triplets that I pulled out of the field that I was just kneeling in. This particular field was planted on April 28th. Today is May 7th, and so consequently it's had a good 9 days worth of growth since it's been planted. A couple of those days are pretty warm. We've actually accumulated about 70 heat units on this particular corn, and you can see where my pen is pointing. The embryo is swollen. We've got root initiation, technically known as the radical root initiation, out of the embryo itself. The other two kernels, you can see the beginnings of the shoots emerging. This corn is perfectly fine. It's doing well, and it will be able to tolerate a lot of harsh conditions. We're not worried about the corn that's in the ground at the moment. It's a lot more to do with the stuff that's still in the bag. Well, helping me out today, I've got Greg Stops. Greg is our area agronomist with Pioneer, services Perth and Huron County. He's a tremendous resource, a guy I use all the time. Greg is one of the smartest dudes on the planet. He knows a lot about crop physiology, in science, life in general, and we really appreciate having him around. Thanks for coming out, Greg.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Russ. That's really high praise. Obviously, I've got Russ fooled. I don't think of myself as all that smart, and all I'll say is Google is your best friend when it comes to anything intellectual.
Classic millennial. Yep, Google is the answer to everything. But today, let's get on with it. Today, that's it. We're not concerned. We're in a field here that was planted back last week in April. We're not concerned about this corn at all. What we want to talk about today is this corn that's still in the bag. And those of you that still have seed to plant, what is the appropriate thought process? It has been exactly 1 year. It's eerie. It's been exactly 1 year this weekend from that cold rip of weather we had a year ago. Some snow, some cold rain, and what we observed a year ago was anybody that planted today or the Friday before the weekend did see some significant stand loss to cold water imbibition and seed getting a bit of a cold shock, and it was a little bit more than some of them could withstand. So what's kind of our thought process here going forward, given that we're similar, we're not identical? But what do you think, Greg?
Yeah, well, I think you've set it up really well, right? That image of last year is fresh in our mind, and the lessons we learned, or I guess the traditional theory that we really proved last year with some of the cold imbibition and cold stress that happened with some of the seed planted right before our cold events. So I'm obviously a bit concerned about planting ahead of, or right ahead of, what is forecast to be quite cold and wet conditions coming this weekend. Now, you can make the argument that the conditions aren't quite as cold and quite as wet as last year, where we even saw snow, but they're still pretty cold and still pretty wet. So I'm very concerned, I guess I would say, about putting anything in the ground today, despite how beautiful the weather seems, despite how good some of the soil conditions seem. It's a bit risky to put the seed in the ground.
And when you talk about soil conditions, it's really easy. We're standing on some monkey dirt here that's been planted. It's had time to settle. But there's a couple of things. We did some soil temperatures here yesterday afternoon at about 2:30, 3 o'clock, bright sunny day, cold wind, but a bright sunny day. And at the 2-inch level on this ground, we had 16 degrees Celsius. This morning at 7 o'clock, again at that 2-inch level where the seed is, it was 6 degrees Celsius. But when we go, that's a firm settled seed bed. Right. When you go in today and cultivate ground and plant into it, you're stirring some cold air in there that isn't going to get warmer real quick. Plus it's a little fluffier.
Yeah, so you're setting yourself up where you've got potentially colder and wetter conditions coming, and you're releasing some of that heat that's already in the soil, right? You're stirring some cold air into it. And you and I look like we're a little warmer than we probably are on camera today. It's a beautiful sunny day, but as soon as that sun goes behind the cloud, it's cold and it is breezy. It is not that warm today. And stirring that cold air into the seed bed as you cultivate and make that final preparation before planting, if you're to do that today, is going to reduce the soil's ability to kind of buffer some of those temperatures. And yesterday, you saw 16 in a settled seed bed. That's awesome, but it did go all the way down to 6, and 6 doesn't really worry me all that much, right, for the seed that's in the ground. But if you're stirring more air in, if you're on any soil that's any lighter, you really risk having those temperatures drop dramatically even lower as we go into colder temperatures through this weekend. And there's forecast rain and cold rain.
A little bit of possible snow.
So
a little chance of snow.
So that temperature in the soil profile is going to drop even further and stress any corn that's initially going in there, that's searching for that initial drink of water. It's going to stress that out even more.
Yeah, so we understand that pretty well. The more air in the ground, the more you get this temperature fluctuation. But there's one other thing that I found in my experience over the years is that when soils are cold and cool, especially first thing in the morning, we tend to, at least I have, my experiences tend to overestimate the condition of that seed bed and think that it's actually a little drier than what it actually is, because during the night you'll get moisture migration coming up, and that moisture isn't warm moisture. It takes heat to draw moisture, a significant amount of moisture out of that seed zone.
Yeah, it can be really tricky, right? Especially in the mornings where you do need a lot of heat to get that moisture out, right? And you can be fooled, and I have been fooled many times in my career going into fields and seeing the dry conditions that we kind of see in the field today on top, only to find out that kind of just below the 2-inch mark or even at the 2-inch mark, the soil is still quite tacky, and that moisture has come up from underneath, carrying colder moisture and colder temperatures with it, right? You need that heat to drive the soils warming up, to drive them drying out. And you can easily be fooled by how nice stuff looks right on the top, thinking that it's fit to plant into, and be caught out with some cold soil conditions right around the seed.
And it's just the opposite when it's warm. The day we planted here, I was wearing my t-shirt. First thing in the morning, actually, I didn't think we maybe were going to be able to plant that day. But by noon, in the heat and sunshine, we tickled it, and it came into gorgeous shape and was actually quite warm that afternoon. And I had full confidence when we planted that we were going to be fine.
Yeah.
Today, I'm not sure I'd have that same level of confidence given today's temperature regime and the next 24 to 48 hours.
Heat definitely works wonders in getting that seed bed fully fit, right? And the forecast this weekend just isn't carrying that heat. So it makes me nervous. And on top of that, it's carrying cold water with it in the forecast, right? That really, really makes me nervous. And frankly, it's May 7th today, Russ. So we have plenty of time.
And given this is planted, I've kept track of the heat. We've accumulated about 70 heat units on this field. Going through this weekend, we're going to get 0 accumulation. It's just going to be too cold to accumulate any more warmth. So at the end of the day, if you plant first next week, you haven't had those 70 heat units. But by the time the growing season goes through, unless it's a really short growing season, big whoop. Yeah. It's really not necessarily going to have much of an impact.
Yeah, and let's keep in mind too that while we have years like 2019 fresh in our mind with how late we had to plant, right? Because of all the rain we got through May, and arguably it was warmer that May than it has been so far this year. With that fresh in my mind, I think it's important to remind ourselves that we're not there yet, right? And our soil conditions today are far more capable of accepting some of the moisture that's in our forecast and drying back out, becoming fit fairly quickly. Some of the warming trends that are coming in the longer term forecast are really going to help us out there. there is so much time left to go before we should even consider getting kind of nervous that I think it's wise to wait through this weekend, let things start warming up a bit. Any moisture we see should kind of readily absorb into the soil, and the soil should get fit fairly quickly.
So our final message, it's Mother's Day coming up. Remember your mother, wish her a happy Mother's Day. You can't take her out, but maybe take her flowers and whatever. And enjoy the weekend. Try to keep it on the down low. I think that's the best suggestion today we can make.
Don't stress. There's plenty of time, but don't put that extra unneeded stress on the crop. Don't chance it. You got plenty of time for full yield potential. Yep. Plenty of time to make good profit off the markets today, right? Don't risk any of that.
Very good. Thanks, Greg. Appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Russ.
Take
care, guys.